Hi, I'm Catalina Maria Johnson. On behalf of Gozamos and Beat Latino, welcome to World Music Fest in Chicago 2012. And it's a pleasure to be here with one of my favorite singer-songwriters, musicians from Mexico City, now based in New York, Rana Santacruz. Welcome, Rana.
Thank you, Catalina. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
And it's a pleasure to have you back here in Chicago. And so there's a lot of things about your music that I love, Rana. As you know, I'm a fan.
Oh, thank you.
I like the fact that you mix so many influences. Tell us a little bit about those influences and how they all came together.
Okay, well, the basic of my music is Mexican music. But yeah, like you say, there's influences there's a lot of bluegrass influences. And
You have a banjo player, in fact.
I have a banjo player, yes. And I have a fiddle player and an upright bass player, which are also very bluegrassy instruments. So there's a lot of bluegrassy influence. There's also a lot of Dixieland influence. I play with two trumpets, which are two instruments that are very present in Mexican music, like the twin trumpets in the mariachi band. You always hear them, so they're very characteristic. But I use them also not only as mariachi, but also as a like a New Orleans style band sometimes.
And was that because that's music that you just loved, or how did that come into
Yeah, that's
play?
just because it's interesting because even when I was in Mexico, when I was living in Mexico, I always listened to that kind of music and I always felt very, very excited about it. Every music that had kind of like acoustic, loud instruments made me feel something inside. So bluegrass, Irish music, but especially Irish music, more like happy, punky Irish music. I always enjoyed
The Pogues? Maybe?
The Pogues. I love the Pogues. That's one of my favorite bands. But also Dixieland. Every time that I had chance to listen to like old jazz bands, I would really, really enjoy it. So little by little, it was interesting because it was not like a very obvious thing to do. I just started making music, but when I moved to New York, suddenly I had all those resources at hand. Because as you know, New York City has musicians from all styles. So suddenly I was like, oh, he plays exactly what I love. So let's just start playing together and stuff like that. So it was a very natural process to start just like mixing
kind of
things
organic.
around.
Yeah.
A very organic process, yeah.
Wow. Now, at the same time, your stories, your music tells a lot of stories. In fact, they're like little short stories.
Yes.
And they're very literary to me. So is this also almost like magical realism? That's the sense I get from some of the stories.
For sure, yes. And I have a lot of influence. I have a lot of influence of visual stuff and of stories. I studied communication. That was like my minor, my major, and my minor was filmmaking. So I have a lot of influence. I've always loved stories and storytelling. So I go to the movies a lot. I love the movies. I think I go to the movies more than I go to live shows, to music shows actually.
Really?
And I read a lot. I really like reading, and and it's interesting because my lyrics, I think I'm more musical by nature. Like music flows more easily. Lyrics take me a while to figure it out, but suddenly I realized that I really enjoy it, even though it's a little bit more of a tormented process because I have to process more things. But I really, really enjoy it.
Well, that's interesting because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask. For example, one of my favorite songs is El Funeral de Tacho, which is, the story of the funeral of this ladies' man.
Right.
And at the funeral, then tears from the women from all over the Republic of Mexico, right? They flow and they, in fact, flood the town.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was like, to me, it was like Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah. And it's funny that that you mentioned that because that one I had just finished reading Cien Años de Soledad. And there's a scene in which there's a drop of blood that crawls at some point. I don't remember exactly the scene, but I remember like blood. I don't know if it's a a drop of blood or just like a stream of blood, but blood that goes somewhere. So that's totally a kind of like a homage. No, how do we say like an
homage?
Yeah, to Gabriel Garcia Marquez for sure. Yeah.
Now, so a song like that, but you're saying the lyrics were harder. So a song like that, did the melody come first, and then you started to piece the words in, or
that one? That one was one of the only songs that I started the process thinking more of the lyrics than the music.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had the basic idea of the music because I had done with my other band. We had done the first part of the story, the Tacho el Gacho, and when we did that song, we recorded it in Madrid a long time ago. And I remember that we did the producer said like, let's play it in a waltz, just like 3/4, and we did a little bit of experiment, and that stayed on my head a little bit like the funeral kind of like like the brass band. So I had like the basic of the harmony, what was gonna be, but then I was like, okay, I know where it's gonna go. I really want to concentrate in the music, in the lyrics. So I started making the lyrics, and it was interesting because in the song there's different towns where the tears are coming from. So I went to Google Maps and because I wanted to find Mexican towns that kind of like rhymed. So I went to Google Maps and I spent like one day, a whole night with a glass of wine just Googling cities that rhymed and that had a nice sound to it.
Yeah, because all the cities are melodic. The names of the cities are melodic too.
Yeah, they were very colorful too.
So that's not coincidence.
That's not coincidence.
That's a night of Google Maps and wine.
Yeah, Google Maps and wine. And some of those, and some of the towns I have been there. So some of them I was like, this one I want to put because I've been here and here and here. So I chose like 4 or 5 that I knew, and then the rest I was just like Google mapping.
Wow.
Yeah.
At the same time, you also do very unique versions of like what I would consider standards, like mariachi standards.
Right.
Like tonight you did for your encore, De Qué Manera
De Qué Manera Te Olvido. Yes.
But it went from mariachi to sort of bolero to sort of like, almost like banda. It was at some point, like or punk.
A little bit of punky.
Something.
Yeah, a little bit of like klezmer or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very cool. So the mariachi is a presence too in terms of like the kinds of things that
and it's and it's always present a little bit in when I play live, and also in my CD I have the honor of having Ramon Ponce, who's a very important figure in New York. He's one of he leads the best mariachi that what I consider the best mariachi in New York, the Mariachi Real de Mexico, and I'm good friends with him, and he helped me record some of the songs. So I really wanted the sound of the vihuela and the guitarrón, and he's a great musician, so he really helped me capture the mariachi part of it.
Wow. Well, speaking of mariachi, these are mariachi pants.
Those are mariachi pants. Yes, this is a mariachi attire, except without the white shirt and the corbata, the tie, and without the hat as well, and the jacket. It's just like a minimalistic version.
But these look very, very beautiful and fancy. I mean, these are like little horseshoes, right?
Yes,
Crafted
and
horseshoes.
the mariachi pants, you can actually get different shapes. There are some that have Aztec suns. There are other ones that have like little horses. These ones have horse heads. So there's a lot of variety, and you choose, and you can have like the expensive and the cheap. This is the cheap, and the cheap is not so cheap.
I was gonna say, yeah.
And but it was interesting because I was speaking of Ramon. Ramon was the one that gave me the information of a guy in Mexico City that makes the suits. So I talked to them, and they were like, "Well, but you're in New York. We need to measure your body because they're supposed to be tight and fit to perfection." So I was like, "No, I'm in New York." So they sent me a piece of paper with a little drawing of the pants, and there were lines next to each section, and I was like, and they said, well, measure them and write the measurements there. So I did that, and I faxed it back, and then they made them, and they sent them back to New York.
They're beautiful.
Thank you. Yes, I like them. Some people, sometimes that we play shows, come to me, and they don't mention anything about the music, and they just, I love your pants. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I should be wearing them still.
No, it's a little bit. It shows where you've come from.
Right. Yeah.
So that's beautiful. Well, speaking of that, now where are you going? I mean, Chicabasco, it's been what, a couple of years?
It's been a few years, I think.
I think
2 years.
2 years since Chicabasco, your last CD.
Yes.
So are you preparing another one?
I'm preparing another one, yes. I am missing like 2 songs to have a new one.
Wow.
And I'm excited. I think it's going to be good.
What kind of surprises are in store for us?
Well, I think you're going to hear a little bit more of... I think you're going to hear more trumpets than on my first album. Because on the first album I didn't use them in all the songs. I think there's gonna be a little bit more trumpets. The next album I want to try to capture a little bit more of the live show. Hopefully I'll be able to make it, and I think you'll hear a little bit more of tango-y influences, a little bit. It's not going to be as obvious, but a little bit of tango, a little bit of son influences, a little bit of Cuban, still kind of like Mexican. You know how Agustin Lara, for example, he used a lot of tango and a lot of son, but it still sounded kind of like Mexican. I kind of want to do something like that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Rana,
Thank
for
you,
being
Catalina.
with us. Thank you for visiting Chicago again, and we look forward to the next time you come.
Hopefully it'll be soon. Thank you so
I
much.
hope so too.